How you doing, Raven?
Doing right. All right tonight. How about you?
I'm stressful because of all the problems we had setting up for this. All the problems I
Understandable.
had.
Hey, we got to start somewhere, and you can't have any mistakes if you're doing it right. Then obviously there's got to be mistakes at one point.
Yep. And I just realized I'm gonna have to do a fair bit of editing after this, fair bit of audio editing. But hey, moving on. So, first bit of news and events we have: Pauly Unstoppable coming out as transgender. Well, not really coming out, but sort of more
More
saying,
publicly.
yeah, yeah, coming out publicly as transgender. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to me, it seems to be a very common thing now, especially in the modification community, being that we easily accept people. A lot of people are more comfortable opening up to others. In the community, it seems that we really don't care if you're gay, bisexual, lesbian, transgender. We accept all kinds of people, no matter what your, gender association is.
Yeah, something else I sort of feel is that um, people who get heavy modifications and all that sort of stuff, they are already, they don't really care about what society thinks of them and stuff. So it's not that transgender, if you get modifications, therefore you're transgender. It's that if you're transgender, you're more likely to have modifications,
Well,
if
that's
that makes
correct, and
sense.
I feel that that's the reason that people get modifications is because they're not comfortable with the skin they're in, so they want to modify to fit what they see in their mind.
Mm.
Uh, Especially with being transgender, a lot of people, then they look at themselves in the mirror, they might see a female, but be in a male body, or might see a male but be in a female body, and making small additions to their body, like getting their tongue split, might make them feel a little bit more attractive to them.
Yeah. Yeah, so Pauly Unstoppable used to identify as pansexual male, but she would now like to be referred to as the feminine. So her, she, the queen, queen diva, and then the extended queen diva, you better believe her. And she's great. You should check out her channel. I'll probably link it in the description.
I
And
think
maybe her Tumblr.
yes, that would be, I think that would be really appreciated by her. And I've always, growing up, I saw Pauly's pictures all over the place, and he's rather famous, and I noticed that he was always leaning towards more of the transgender side, more feminine.
Yeah, yeah, she's always been feminine.
Right. So, um, I I didn't you really wasn't shocked or anything. I expected it more,
Mm,
and I feel like she's happier the way she is now, the way she expresses herself, being able to dress how she feels that her body should be dressed, instead of having to dress manly.
yeah. Um, and Pauly Unstoppable, probably one of the most famous people in the body modification world. Um, closely, I would say that she's like the daughter of body modification.
I would say that you are correct, being that she did get a lot of the first mods and was known for the unstoppable capabilities of her modifications.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting just watching her progress, going through life and seeing her go from a completely, just it looked like a crayon exploded all over her.
A
And
black one
now
now.
and now she's so beautiful with all these, intricate designs, and it's like actually watching a full body transformation right before your eyes. You know,
Definitely.
um, Everything's changed in her. Her personality, the way she wants the media to see herself, everything about her has changed.
And Pauly Unstoppable, one of the first, I think the first to get commercial eyeball tattooing.
That's correct.
She was, which you have, Raven.
Yes, yes, I do. I'm currently the Calico Kid, as some people have named me. Shannon Shannon Larrats called them psychedelic eyes at once, and called them over the rainbow, as he was just so amazed by, you know, what so many different things are going on in them.
I love your eyes.
Thank you.
I like how the ink is. Personally, I'm not that big for eyeball tattoos, but I like the sciencey and stuff.
Right.
The technique behind it, yeah.
I do not recommend anybody to get it.
Sorry about that, guys. The call dropped for some reason, and there was problems which ensued afterwards. But as Raven was saying, the tattooing of the eye, still in trial, should not be attempted, and
That is correct.
not recommended by any stretch of the imagination.
That is correct. As being one of the people that has had his eyes stained, as I had changed the name to, being that the community seems to express the word tattooed as using a tattoo machine, and people outside of the community see it as a very dangerous procedure, which is, to this day, not fully researched. We have been seeing some complications with migration of the pigment. The proper term for it is eye staining or sclera staining, as it is a medical procedure that is done in the medical field to correct the scleration of the sclera, which is called a sclera injection. Being that it's been taken into the modification industry, I decided that it needed to be corrected to the term that seemed more acceptable to both the modification community and the medical community, to sclera staining, as it is more of a stain than a tattoo.
Awesome. And one of the people who, I suppose, kick-started the whole eyeball staining was Shannon Larrats, who sadly has passed away.
Yeah, it's a very sad day for everybody.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, it was losing Tiger and Man Woman in the same time frame was very, very distraughting. And I couldn't come to words. I couldn't get on Facebook, talk to anybody. I just put up his picture and just kept looking over the emails that he had sent to me and things that we had discussed. And, I wanted to meet him in person and stare into his eyes and just be like, we are one of a kind. Sadly, that day never came, and he really made me into the person I am now. I admire him since I was a little kid, and as an adult, I got the chance to, follow him and do things like he did. I feel that him and I were two of a kind, and although nobody will be as amazing as he was.
No.
Being an artist myself,
For me, he was, because he created BME. How I got into body modifications was through BME. I read every single page on the wiki. As recent as 2012, I think is when I finished reading. I started reading 2011. I had an interest in piercing and stuff before that, but BME is what got me into modification. And yeah, so every single page. And I had talked with him about plans I had for different mods and stuff. And sadly, he'll never be able to see them. But as you said, Stalking Cat also died not so long ago. And he was someone I looked up to as well.
That's actually right before Stalking Cat died, or as people that knew him personally called him Tiger. I was going to get my eyes stained the day that he actually passed away, and my eyes were just so swollen from having tears in my eyes. He was the reason that I honestly wanted to transform myself. I saw him, and I was like, wow, if you could do that, then anything is possible. Being that I feel that I'm a chimera, a mix between a cat and a bird. He was basically, I don't want to use the word God, but he was my idol. He was my version of what perfection was.
Mm. Yeah, Shannon Larrats also passed away in the same week that my one of my close female friends, grandfather and next door neighbor passed away. So it was quite the interesting week for myself.
And a funny story about that. The day that Shannon had passed, that night, I just felt really uncomfortable. I just was having a horrible day, and somebody made my day horrible by saying something about my modifications and what I had done to myself, and it kind of got to me, and I was ready to give up. I was ready to stop blogging. I was ready to stop, conversing with the community, and I was even willing to take out all my modifications and try to go back to normality, what people have seen as normality. The next morning, it was very hard for me to know that I had been so selfish to want to take my own life, because of what people said to me. Not in a physical form, but in a spiritual form, as the person that I am would have been destroyed.
Yeah.
And a different person would have been, come out, somebody I don't want to be. So I woke up and I logged onto Facebook, and I had countless messages from people, just telling me, oh, did you hear Shannon Larrats passed? Did you hear Shannon Larrats passed? And I'm just like, oh, please stop reminding me. I got the first status, and the night before, I was just like, man, I'm gonna rewrite the blog that I had written about eye staining, and I wanted to get some advice from Shannon. So I messaged him, but it didn't click in my mind that he wasn't going to be able to, reply to it.
Mm.
So to me, his spirit is still alive, and that's why I created BNB, because I feel that through my blogging, I can keep his spirit alive.
Yeah, I used to get a lot of updates through the community, through him, I suppose. And that's why I decided to organize this, because I'm hoping this will turn into, this is what's new in the community, this is what's happening.
Right. And I'm pretty sure that he would followed and, given us advice on how to do it in a more professional way and how to do things where we didn't seem hypocritical or made mistakes. I remember the beginning stages of Mod Blog. It just seemed so unreal because all the people on it, we were like, as young people, we were all like, oh my God, wow, that's so new. Things were so new back then. And now it's been so advanced. I mean, Fakir Muzafar and Tiger and Man Woman and Unstoppable, Pauly Unstoppable, all those people have been around, but there's no single place for everybody to meet.
Yeah.
And once Shannon created, Mod Blog and it just exploded, people could find each other.
Definitely.
There was no loneliness anymore,
And as I said, BME, Body Mod Design, being pretty much the reason I got interested in what you could call advanced modifications.
Right.
But moving on from that somber topic, we also, it's not all going to be about body modifications, this podcast, because we're people, we like to talk about other things as well. Something I love, do you know who Vladimir Putin is?
Yes, I do.
For those of you who don't, he's ex-president of Russia?
That's correct.
And he's a billionaire. And he did some of the most hilarious things, like hilariously bad things. I remember hearing that he crashed into a restaurant. His chauffeur crashed into a restaurant. It wasn't bad, but they did damage to the building. And instead of paying for the damages, he just bought the restaurant. He's like, no, I can't be bothered settling this out of court. I'll just buy it off you and then not repair it. So he spent extra money to do less work, which I thought was great.
Right. I think at some point, people with lots of money, they get that idea where money, you can buy yourself out of anything, and it's so true. I mean, it's so true. You have the right amount of money, you can get whatever you want. I mean, just think about modifications. You have enough money, you can get basically anything done.
And something that came out of that was there was a guy traveling from Germany? From Salzburg to Munich. And he had a fake ID of Vladimir Putin. Like, oh, he speaks Russian. And I think he was in Latvia. So they would have a fair idea who Vladimir Putin is. This guy's like, nah, it'll be fine.
Didn't they say that he looked so much alike that it would just be as a joke, and people actually started taking him seriously?
Yeah, people were joking about how much he looks like it, and then he got a fake ID, tried to see how far he could go. It was confirmed as a realistic forgery.
Right.
And all the numbers on it is 0.
It's like I'm just wondering, if I had that much money and I could wreck a car into a restaurant and buy it instead of fix it, I would probably do another ridiculous things like, going out somewhere and spray painting people pink, just to see the reactions,
You should see some of the stuff they did. There used to be a TV show here in Australia, The Gruen Transfer, and they had a segment called What Would Putin Do? And
oh, really?
It was whenever he got bad press, what he did. So it's like, what would you do if you were giving a speech at a kindergarten and then started swearing uncontrollably? And,
that's right. You did do that, didn't you?
And he'd do something like, he'd just do something like, buy flowers for the families of every single person. It wasn't ever like really sensical what the stuff he would do. So yeah, that's our news and events segment. Moving on to the purely body modification discussion. Today's topic is going to be pleasure or pain. That came from you, Mr. Starr.
Yes, this is a topic that I've been wanting to actually touch and do a blog about, but since Facebook tends to delete some of my things because people don't like exactly what I say at times. Sometimes I feel that people get modifications purely out of pleasure, and some get it to feel pain. I remember in the late 1990s, a great epidemic of people cutting themselves just was all over the place. Teenagers just cutting themselves.
And it's
all over.
continuing today.
And it's continuing. Now we can cut ourselves and not look like freaks because it's considered art. The difference between mutilating yourself for the pain and mutilating or modifying yourself for the pleasure is completely different, and people need to understand this. You can take a knife and start cutting at your arm and sit there and cry hysterically, but at the same time you're feeling better. Yes, I see this as a way to comfort yourself and to give those endorphins that make you feel good, but you're going at it completely wrong. Personally, I think that being an ex-cutter, I think that you're going at it wrong if you're doing that. Now, after receiving my first professional scarification, I realized how sensual it was and how erotic I was getting. I was actually getting turned on by the procedure as I saw the blood drip down my chest, and I saw the artist's eyes dilate, and I felt the connection with the female, and I was just so, it was erotic,
It's a very personal thing, so.
It is. It's very. And, in past times and primal times, cuttings were done at a very young age to people. It's not something new. It's been going on for thousands, even millions of years. Who knows? But the topic that pain or pleasure is whenever we go and get a tattoo or a piercing. I personally have tattooed a female that the entire time that I tattooed her, she was orgasming. And she said, "I'm sorry, I'm going to have to buy you a new chair." And I looked at her like, "Why?" And I'm like, "'Cause I soaked it." And I turned bright red, and being brown skinned, that's a little hard to do. But I looked at her and I was like, "It's okay, I get the same sensation at times. Even if it's a male artist, there's times that I get turned on myself. Suspensions, especially with suspensions. My first thought when I first suspended, I was like, "Oh my goodness, this would be amazing with sex." It's just those endorphins are going through you, and you're just in like a primal mindset. Your body is completely just, you don't care about anything else but what's in the moment. You're in the moment, sort of like having sex.
For me, again, with a lot of people, a question that a lot of modified people get asked is, what's the difference between mutilation and modification? And for me, mutilation is when you're doing it to destroy yourself. And that's, a lot of times, that's what cutters do. They're really unhappy with themselves, they're really unhappy with the situations, and so they cut to sort of destroy a bit of themselves to get away from that. And right. I'm not saying that it's not an effective way of dealing with it, but to me it's mutilation because it's not something you want to do. If you weren't upset, you wouldn't be cutting yourself. You're doing it because you want to feel better, not because you're choosing to do it as such.
Right. At times I feel like it's a clinical illness too. You don't know what to do with these feelings, so you want to externalize it, and well, and sometimes it might just be for attention,
Definitely. But also I have, with modifications, I'm really not against the sexualization of it, but I'm I stay away from it, in that I don't think it needs to be, I don't think it has to be, I don't think it should be. I think it can be for different people, but definitely not for myself. For me, modification is about bringing out you as a person. And I've got plans for horns and full body tattoo and branding and all this stuff. I have no plans for any kind of genital anything. Just because it's something I haven't ever thought about.
See, me personally, I started at the genitals. That was my first heavy mod. I wanted Prince Albert for the longest time, and I was always so ashamed, or I wasn't comfortable with myself to go and get the modification at a shop. But being that I have been doing piercings for myself for quite a while, I was like, okay, you know what? I know how to do it. I've read the piercing Bible over and over. I've done research. Okay, let's do this. So one night, my fiance went out, and she was at work, and her friend was over, and I was like, could you do me a favor? I'm about to do something that's a little bit dangerous. In case I mess up, will you please take me to the hospital? She's like, sure. Well, I come out of my little studio, and I'm like, check it out. And she's like, what? And I'm like, I had my pants down, my genitals sticking out. And she's like, oh my goodness, there's a needle through you. And I'm like, yeah. And it's bleeding. And like, I was full on, and I slipped the jewelry through, screwed on the tops and looked at it, and what used to be something that I did not enjoy looking at, I now could look at it and admire it. I felt as I was, more sexually attractive.
Mm. See, sexual attraction, I can understand that, like a split tongue. That's something that a lot of people get to be attractive, because like, who doesn't think about what's that gonna feel like giving me oral sex?
Exactly.
But I don't think that's necessarily a sexual thing. It's not like you got it split, and while getting
Just
it
for that
split
reason.
were, yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's my thing. My pleasure though is, I have a really low blood level, really low blood pressure, and I tend to faint a lot when I have blood taken out of me, or when I go through a lot of trauma, when my body goes through a lot of trauma.
Right.
So getting my scarification, I started to pass out, and I really like the feeling just before you pass out.
The endorphin that. So whenever you get modified, it's more of a, you want to get that super high feeling of endorphins rushing through you right
Well,
before you pass
kind of.
out.
I like the calmness of it, because all the blood just rushes to your head, and it actually blocks out a lot of sound. And sort of all you can feel is your heart pumping, and you're trying to sort of stay on that line of consciousness.
Interesting. I've never experienced that. I guess that's something that I will never experience, as you'll probably never experience what I experience.
Yeah.
You know, I see like you and I are both on a different spectrum of the modification industry. I feel like, personally, I would never get horns, just because, one, they're so associated with the devil and, you know, evil, and I see myself as a enlightened creature, so it would not be something that I would do. Now, a tongue bifurcation is something that I have always desired. For one reason, I really, really into the sexual part of it. Like, I want to know how it feels like to be able to move both sides of it, and how, you know, having experienced a bifurcated tongue in oral sex, it was not as pleasurable as I expected. But being that I'm a male and my gender association is straight, and I prefer women, I think that it would be rather pleasurable for the female. My first piercing was my tongue, and I never really liked it. You know, it just the clinking in my teeth and all that. But the girls liked it. So to me, that's where I guess the sexual part came into the modification.
Why do you think I invited you over? I'm like, hey, we're like two different people with the same interests. We should totally do this. We'll get some good discussion going.
Right.
I actually passed out when I got my lips pierced, because I hadn't eaten or slept. I was going through a really rough time in life. I had insomnia, and I also had a whole stack of stress and stuff going on, so my body wasn't the healthiest. But I got my lips pierced and passed out during one of them. And
wow.
It was the calmest I'd been for months. And after that, I was just like, I just felt so much better, and it was probably like a suspension. I haven't done one yet, but I definitely plan to.
It's something you should experience. I think you would really enjoy it.
It was just something that completely changed how I was feeling.
So I have a question for you. I've noticed that you tend to represent yourself in a very professional way, and in the modification world, it seems like everybody's just fuck this, fuck that, shit, motherfucker, all this, you know, curse word and curse word after curse word. do you think that the reason that we're like that is because we really just don't care anymore, you know, and we're rebels, you know? One thing that kind of bothers me about how people see us is the fact that I could be walking down the street and people will clear a path just because they see me. You know, they're like, "Oh, that's scary."
Yeah.
And that's the first reaction they get. You know, they see somebody and they're like, "Oh, that's scary." So, you know, I've had a path cleared. I personally have a fear of blood. It's kind of gone away with the time, but my grandmother had hepatitis and my aunt had hepatitis, so I was brought up to be very careful with blood. So in my mind, blood was a no-no. Now, in the community, in the modification community, there's such thing as blood play and sexual blood play. That to me is still scary, but I'm still kind of curious about it. What are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on blood play, or my thoughts on how the community is and why we're a little bit different.
Basically on why we're a little bit different, and I guess we can touch two different subjects. Start off with, you know, how we're seen by people outside of the community.
So, people outside of the community, I think that the body modification community is really, we like to say that we're accepting of everyone, but a lot of people aren't. They're accepting of people who are different. They're not accepting of everyone.
Right.
And it's the same, and that's the same as society. They're accepting of everyone except those who are different. And I think the best place to be is in the middle, where I don't care if you are tattooed, I don't care if you're not tattooed. I don't care if you want to modify your body for sexual reasons. I don't care if you detest modifications for any reason. As long as you're not enforcing anything on me or anyone else, and you're not getting in the way of anyone else, that's fine.
Right.
And I think that's why, personally, I don't go into the whole gore and the whole blood play and everything. That's why I don't think of piercings as... I don't think of myself as a modified person. I think of myself as a person with modifications.
See, and a lot of people think of themselves as a modified person. They don't.
Yeah.
They forget that they were a person first.
Yeah, like my friend, he it was obvious he was getting tattoos and piercings for attention.
Right.
And he's now got a mustache tattooed on his finger, which he regrets. He regretted it as soon as he got it. And like,
oh my god,
I've
seen so many of those.
Yeah, but on some people, like, if you're fully modified and you know that what you're getting is going to stay with you forever, if you think about it, that's fine. And if you enjoy it, that's fine. But he obviously didn't enjoy it. He obviously didn't want it, but he got it anyway because he thought, oh, that's who I am. I'm that guy who has to get these tattoos and stuff. Whereas me, I'm like, I like to do things.
Right.
And I like to, I'm trying to get work at the moment, so being professional is sort of not really a choice at the moment. It's more of a way to get seen and all of that. As well as the people I look up to in the body modification world are very professional. They're Joltron and Luna Cobra, who run First Blood. Joltron, through watching him, I learnt how to be social on the internet, how to create content and all of that sort of stuff, and how to gather a following, I suppose. As well as Adam from BodyMod TV and bodymod.org. He started up his own store, and what I learned from him was you can't half-ass anything. If you want to do something, do it. Don't. You can't build a business on a shoestring budget. You have to go all out, and you have to put all your effort into it. And that's why I feel that I'm a little bit more professional, because through those people I've learned that I have to be professional, I suppose.
When I first got into modifications, I wasn't allowed to get tattoos. My mom was against it. It's kind of weird. She would allow me to get my tongue pierced before I could get my ears pierced, because my ears were visible. So basically she said, you can get anything you want pierced that's not visible. So, at first I kind of hid it. I think I had my nipples done before I had anything else visible. And then I got my lip done at 13. And at that point, I knew that's what I wanted in life. At 18, I got my hand tattooed at the top of my hand. And, the instant I got it, I was like, well, there goes my life, I kind of, didn't really want this to be my profession. I wanted to be a medical profession, or be a lawyer or something to defend the rights of people, which I kind of fell into as a modified person, as a person that is modified. When I first came out publicly with my modifications, I had a huge following. A huge following. People just were so interested in me. It was content after content after content, picture after picture after picture. And then I realized that I was not getting followed because people were enjoying what I was doing, but because I was getting laughed at. But that's something that you have to understand. When you get into this, there's no going back. There's no off switch. There's no take this pill and it's gone.
Yeah.
You put something on your face, you're instantly going to be labeled as a modified person. Instantly.
Yep.
Even if it's the smallest thing. A good example is, it's Luna Cobra, Howie.
I love Howie.
He is modified. Yes, he is. But he's not heavily modified. In my eyes, he's not,
He's got some pretty advanced mods. He's just got them hidden.
Exactly. His can all be hidden. He can put on a suit, and he looks just like everybody else,
Well, a suit and a beard. He's actually in the process of removing his chin tattoos. So he's got a beard at the moment, so he can hide it.
So that's why I think I chose my eyes first, because I chose my hand first. I didn't just, they say hit the floor running, Well, I did. I jumped into it, and I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to immerse myself in this as much as possible. And now I feel that I'm probably as respected as some of the people that have been in the community a longer time than I have. The funny thing is that I never posted anything on BME. I never was part of I am. I would look on there, but I never joined. To me, it was personal. They were for me. It wasn't for anybody else. And to this day, it's not for anybody else. I don't do anything because, I want to do this for this person, or I want to do this for this person. I did that once. I got a tattoo for a fiance. And you know what? I don't regret the tattoo. But I'm just, I'm thinking back, I'm like, man, I could have spent that money on something that I did want, not something that she wanted.
Yeah. For me, I haven't jumped into it. I'm just doing what I want to do. I'm not thinking, well, I better get this because I've got this. My first visible piercing. Like I had my lobes pierced. Oh, and then I got my flats, which is the cartilage, or the conch, or the conch, however you want to pronounce it. But they fell out. So really the first piercing I got was a bridge piercing. And I'm like from the sticks, I'm from the country. Like, lip piercings are seen as like, oh, this person's got a lip piercing, they must be troubled. No, this person's got an eyebrow piercing, he's so young and troubled. And then I come around with my bridge piercing and people are like, what are you doing with your life? Like, calm down. But I got it because I wanted to get it. It wasn't because I thought, oh, this will get people riled up, or, oh, well, I better get it now because I want to dive into this. So, yeah, like I got scarification before I got a tattoo. I still haven't got a tattoo yet. But it's because I wanted scarification. It's not because I wanted to dive into it and have an advanced modification. It's because it's what I wanted. We did go we did go on a bit of a rant at the end there. Usually would put in questions where we just sort of shut the shit for a bit there. So if you do have any questions for me or Raven, send them in to us at themodcast@hotmail.com. Link will be in the description, as well as anything else you want to say. If you'd like to be a guest, or if you'd like to help out with the Modcast by being a weekly person, message the Modcast at Hotmail as well. Thanks for being with me, Raven.
Yes, no problem. Also, feel free to check out my page, facebook.com, Body Modification Blog. I have tons of blogs on. Anything you want me to touch, I will gladly blog about it, and I do research, so feel free to, send me your questions.
As well as we have links to all our social media in the description. Bye, guys.
Next time.